The West is accusing emboldened Russia of commanding the world's stage with outlandish manoeuvres, from false flag attacks inside Ukraine to an influx of troops arriving on the border. Western governments believe these, among other factors, signal Putin has decided to invade in the next matter of days. The Sun talks to Russian and European political expert Richard Sakwa for an in-depth look at the key developments of the unfolding crisis.
I mean, Ukraine is purely as an instrument in the Second Cold War, which is in danger of spiraling in all sorts of directions.
The West accuses Russia of false flag attacks inside Ukraine. In one barrage, Russian-backed separatist forces hit a Ukrainian nursery school. Is this a key pretext for action?
No, it was bizarre, to be absolutely honest. How on earth it's a false flag when it was quite openly a part of the endless battle along that front line? I mean, it's a very dangerous situation. And what has upset me, I must say, over the last few years is the way that these permanent attacks on civilians in Donetsk and Lugansk is ignored by the Western media. And this dreadful attack yesterday, I mean, the point is, both sides have been constantly infringing and breaching the ceasefire agreements, and it has led to the deaths of thousands.
How dangerous does this make the situation?
Ukraine has got 130,000 troops, including very many, very militant battalions, which have been, as I say, shooting at these civilians on the other side of the line for years, which the West has simply ignored, shockingly, to be honest. So this attack on the kindergarten, of course, it's dreadful, absolutely. But I'm sure they weren't targeting, because there was a whole barrage, and unfortunately, the kindergarten. And this is the whole point. The West has not put pressure on Kiev to fulfill its obligations according to the Minsk Accord. And that's the fundamental thing. Instead of which, they've been piling on more sanctions on Russia to make it fulfill its obligations according to the Minsk Accords, this peace agreement of February 2015. So it's an absolute disastrous mess in which civilians are, of course, as always, the victims.
Russia announced a partial pullback of troops on Tuesday, yet by Thursday, US intelligence signaled a further 7,000 Russian troops massing on the Ukraine border, adding to the 150,000 already stationed there. A new military pontoon bridge has been established over the Pripyat River in Belarus, and a huge field hospital has been built.
We do not see any sign of de-escalation on the ground.
I'm afraid that what we're seeing is the opposite.
We'll take them at their word, but we're going to judge Russia by their actions.
Mixed signals, I think, at the moment, and all the more reason, therefore, for us to remain very tough and very united.
Why do you think Russia claimed to de-escalate?
Well, in part, it was because the United States had warned that Russia would invade the following day, the 16th. So they were playing cat and mouse, if you like, on that one. But it's a type of a Russian-style gunboat diplomacy, is because it's trying to get a settlement which the other side maybe doesn't particularly want, but it's being forced to. And in this case, what Russia is trying to do is to get the Western powers, the Atlantic powers, or NATO allies, to the negotiating table, and in Moscow's view, for them to fulfill what they said they would do 30 years ago, which is to get what they call indivisible security, that you don't improve or enhance your own security at the expense of another. And that's the big Russian argument. Because Russia is a continental power, it doesn't play with gunboats, it plays with armies on land.
And the large field hospital on the Ukraine border, does this signify they're ready to move?
I've been very skeptical about this for many reasons, because what on earth would they do if they did invade? How would you occupy a huge country with 42 million people, many of whom would be deeply opposed? And, as we know, the United States got bogged down in Vietnam. We know that the Soviet Union got bogged down in Afghanistan. And then the United States, second time, got bogged down in Afghanistan. This is a country much smaller and a much lower level of development. So a war would be catastrophic for all sides.
Putin claimed he did not want a war after talks with Olaf Scholz. Is this more mixed signals?
Well, certainly the signals are jolly mixed, but on the issue of war, the signals are not at all mixed. Russia has consistently argued that it has no plans and never had any plans to invade or to attack Ukraine. And this was also stated yesterday, the 17th of February, in Russia's response handed to the US ambassador in Moscow, John Sullivan. Its response to the US response to Russians' earlier ideas on a European security treaty. And in this document, which I've just been looking at this morning, it says, right at the beginning, we do not and never had plans to invade Ukraine. So on that, there are no mixed signals. But of course, the big mixed signal is, what on earth are these over 100,000 troops with field hospitals and all the rest that you mentioned doing on the Ukrainian border? Indeed. And so therefore, all wars begin with a sort of a bluff. You don't want to give away your hand too soon.
Liz Truss says this could drag on for months, and NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said the volume of Russian troops stationed around Ukraine could become the new normal. What do you make of that?
Well, no, absolutely. I've been saying this as well, that this standoff can continue for months. And in fact, I've been saying that for a long time, unless we can genuinely establish a genuine framework for diplomacy and negotiation about Russia's legitimate security concerns. And to give Biden credit, the US side, they have accepted that there are some issues which we can talk about. The Minsk Accords, ones which call on Ukraine to do certain things, is being pushed forwards by the group, the so-called Normandy format. That's France, Germany, Russia, and Ukraine. And I think the United States should join it, by the way, to try to get a settlement of the Donbass conflict. Because in part, one of the reasons for Russian forces there is to stop a Ukrainian invasion attack on the Donbass itself. So we've got a standoff. Ukraine has got 130,000 troops on its side of the border, armed to the teeth now with Western and now British weapons. And we've got these forces on the other side to stop that.
Do you agree we are closer than ever to seeing a Russian invasion?
I think we're closer than ever to see a conflict, yes. I think that we are, and I've been arguing this for some years now, in a second Cold War. And we managed the first Cold War after the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 quite well, with channels of communication, red lines, hotline telephones, and all the rest, and the architecture of arms control. All of this has been dismantled and forgotten. So the second Cold War is far more dangerous than the first. I think the situation is appallingly dangerous, far more dangerous, and again, as dangerous as the Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962, when the Soviet leadership put nuclear weapons on Cuba, 90 miles away from the United States. And obviously the United States wasn't going to accept this.
As the world braces for a Russian invasion of Ukraine, Western leaders are focusing on coordinating a collective response, stressing the importance of standing firm against Russia with clear deterrents, including sanctions. In desperate attempts for the West to talk down Russian aggression, officials stress there is still opportunity for de-escalation and for President Putin to step back and avoid a bloody and pointless war. Valerie Browne, The Sun.